The night sky over the Arizona desert was calm to calm. Stars shimmered like frozen lights, and the horizon stretched endlessly. At 2:37 a.m., a small private plane named Echo Flat 103 disappeared from the radar. It was as if the plane had been swallowed by the darkness above. The pilot, Captain Robert Hayes, was an experienced flyer. 20 years in the air, no record of mistakes. That night, he was flying a short cargo trip, only 90 minutes from Tucson to Flagstaff. The weather was clear, the air silent, and everything seemed routine until it wasn't. At 2:12 a.m., the control tower received a strange radio message. A faint voice came through the static. Slow and distant. Tower. Something's out here. The controller asked him to repeat, but there was only static. Then, a second later, the voice again. Lights. Above me. That was the last anyone heard from Captain Hayes. No distress call. No mayday. Just silence. When the plane didn't arrive, search teams were sent immediately. Helicopters, rescue drones, and ground units swept the desert for days. They found nothing. No wreckage, no oil stains, not even a single piece of metal. It was as if the plane had vanished into thin air. People were confused. Radar showed that the aircraft had simply stopped existing in mid. The last radar dot blinked near a stretch of desert known by locals as the Dead Zone, a place said to mess with compasses and radios. Old pilots warned never to fly over it. Some said the air felt heavy, like flying through invisible water. Others said their instruments went crazy, showing shapes and signals that weren't there. 2 days later, something strange happened. A farmer named Eli Turner, living near the Dead Zone, reported hearing the faint sound of a plane engine in the middle of the night. When he stepped outside, the sound stopped. He looked up and saw nothing. Only stars. But then he heard it again, closer this time, like something circling above him. He shined his flashlight into the sky. The light hit nothing. But for a second, the beam reflected off something metallic. Something huge. Then, the night went silent again. The next morning, search teams checked the area, but found nothing. Eli swore he wasn't dreaming. He said the sound was real. And he said he heard a voice through the static of his radio later that night. Tower. Something's out here. The same words Captain Hayes spoke before vanishing. 3 weeks passed. The investigation closed with no answers. The case was labeled Unexplained Disappearance, Probable Crash. But the problem was, there was no crash site. Then, 2 months later, hikers found something deep in the desert. Half buried in sand was a piece of metal with faded paint. It read, Echo Flight 103. The strange thing, the metal wasn't damaged. It wasn't burned, rusted, or broken. It looked like it had just fallen from the sky. The discovery raised more questions. How could a plane vanish and drop only one piece of metal 2 months later? And where was the rest of it? Locals began telling stories again about the Dead Zone. They said strange things happened there. Compasses spin on their own. Radios pick up voices that don't exist. Some even say they've seen lights moving silently through the night sky, shaped like planes that make no sound. One pilot, Mark Jensen, claimed he once flew close to that area. He said he saw another plane flying beside him. Same size, same color, but it had no lights, no sound, and no shadow. When he looked back a second later, it was gone. Investigators reopened the case. They checked every theory. Crash, no debris. Hijack, no radar trail. Lightning, clear skies. Abduction, impossible. Or so they thought. When they replayed the last radar log, they noticed something bizarre. Just before Echo Flight 103 vanished, another unknown object appeared on the screen for 3 seconds. It had no ID, no signal, nothing. And it was flying above Hayes' plane. Then, both vanished. In the years that followed, more planes went missing near that same region. All small aircraft, all at night, all near the Dead Zone. Every time, the same pattern. Last words, then silence, and no wreckage ever found. Locals started calling it the sky that eats. They said if you fly over that desert after midnight, you might see the lights, bright white lights that follow you, float above your wings, and then pull you into the dark sky. Even now, the families of the missing pilots still wait for answers. Some believe it was government testing, secret experiments gone wrong. Others think something far stranger controls that airspace. A place where the sky itself decides who comes back and who doesn't. Late at night, radio operators sometimes hear static on the airwaves near Route 89. Among the static, a faint voice whispers tower. Something's out here. And then silence. 5 years had passed since Echo Flight 103 vanished. No wreckage, no bodies. Only silence. But one man couldn't let it go. Captain Daniel Reeves, a student of Robert Hayes, wanted answers. He knew Robert too well. He would never make a mistake in the sky. Something else happened that night. At a small airport diner, an old pilot warned him, the desert sky isn't empty. There's something up there. The man's eyes were hollow. Once you see the lights, they follow you. Daniel didn't believe in ghost stories, but that warning stayed in his head. He opened the old radar map again. Every missing plane had vanished inside the same 50-mile circle, the dead zone. That night, he made his choice. He would fly through it. The next evening, Daniel took off in his small plane, Flight X92. The desert below was black and endless. At first, all was calm. Then, his compass began spinning, and the radio filled with static. Suddenly, 2 bright white lights appeared ahead, floating silently. He tried to call the tower. No response. The lights circled his plane, then vanished into the clouds. He exhaled. Maybe it was just a storm. But then, his radar beeped again. Another object. Right behind him, Daniel turned his head and froze. A plane was following him. Same size, same shape as Echo Flight 103. And through the cracked windshield, he saw a man inside. It was Robert Hayes. Daniel shouted over the radio. "Robert, do you copy?" Only static. Then a whisper came through. "Turn back, before it takes you too." Daniel's voice shook. "Robert, it's not me." The other plane's lights turned blood red, and then it vanished, exploding into light and silence. Daniel's plane shook violently. The air grew heavy, instruments spinning wildly. Through the window, he saw shadows with wings swirling in the clouds. A voice whispered from nowhere. "Tower. Something's out here." Then his plane disappeared from radar. Hours later, rescue teams found Daniel's plane perfectly landed in the desert. The cockpit was empty. No footprints, no struggle. Just his radio still whispering. When they played the recording, they heard Daniel's voice one last time. "Hecho 103. I see the lights." Then silence. Now, locals call that stretch of sky the Ghost Corridor. On stormy nights, pilots say you can still hear 2 voices in the static tower. Something's out here. Don't follow the lights.